Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale on what has been a somewhat slow week in U of A news, but you know what? That's actually a good thing. We had a feeling that there would be some transfers in basketball. We knew that. Football, that's probably coming. So we'll talk a lot about that. But Shane, some actually really good things going on. Softball, baseball. I didn't think we would have a lot to talk about this time of year in terms of good sports success, but I was proven wrong.
Well, a kiss of death. And when I worked at ABC 15 in the sports department, there looks like it's going to be a slow sports day because there's all hell breaks loose. Which you probably cursed us, Eric, in that as soon as we're done, as soon as we upload this podcast and you start listening, there's going to be some big breaking transfer portal news or something. But no, it's we're not quite in the I wouldn't say like the dog days of summer. We still got baseball and softball and some other stuff going on. But the floodgates are going to break with the transfer portal, both football and basketball any second now. And hopefully by the time you're listening to this podcast will still be relevant because it is things can happen fast. I remember last year, especially with the basketball team, we were all panicking, or at least you were panicking about the lack of commits. And then there were a bunch within a 2-week span or 3-week span or whatever it was. And I'm sure that's coming soon.
Next week, you and I are both traveling, me for work, you for pleasure, going to NHL playoff game. So
got to find another city to watch NHL hockey now.
Yeah, definitely not the Phoenix area, or Tempe. So it feels like, so of course something's got to break next week when we're not going to be doing a show until somewhat later in the week. Don't know when that will be, but we'll get something out there. So let's hope things are fairly calm until then.
Well, you know what's funny, Eric, is I'm going to Vancouver. You're going to Nashville, and I think that first round matchup is going to be Canucks Predators. So maybe I'll catch a game up north, you catch a game out there, and we'll compare notes.
I will not, because they'll be up north. For the way the series goes, I won't be there for work while they're playing. Nonetheless,
that's right.
We're going to have our buddy Barrett Baker on. We haven't had him on in a long time. He's one of our favorite guests.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk everything football with him. We're going to talk transfer portal, spring football, just his thoughts on everything. The spring game is a week from Saturday. I'm not quite sure if Shane and I will get another show out between now and then. Guess we'll see how it all plays out. But we'll talk with Barrett. He'll give us his thoughts on everything, football related. But before we get into that, Shane, it is time for your standouts. What do you have for us this week?
Well, I know their winning streak just came to an end thanks to those pain in the rear end Lopes in Phoenix. But we got to start with our ranked Arizona baseball team. Hopefully they'll still be ranked again next week. And again, it's all been about the pitching for them. Jackson Kent allowed 1 run on 3 hits in 7 innings in the first game of Arizona's 3-game set against Louisiana Tech, which is a very good baseball team. And then Cam Walty, who I think I'd mentioned a good half dozen times now on this show, gave up 2 runs, but 0 earned runs on 4 hits in 7 innings in the series finale. And in between, you had a ridiculous rally from 5-0 in the 9th to win and keep that streak going. Yeah. So it was, it was a nice 9-game streak, and then they pushed it to 10, pushed it to 11, and they almost pulled off another win at GCU. They were down 5-2 and left the tying run on 3rd. But baseball teams got it rolling, even with the hiccup in Phoenix. Softball team took 2 out of 3 from a ranked Oregon team. Aisa Silva, who we mentioned before, she struggled a bit in the series opener, but she allowed just 1 run in 9 2/3 innings in the final 2 games of that series. She's been their best pitcher this season, and she's only a sophomore, so that is fantastic news for Caitlin Lowe and the coaching staff there. And then we got to mention the 2 women's basketball players who were selected in the WNBA draft. Esmery Martinez selected 17th overall by the New York Liberty, and Helena Pueyo selected 22nd overall by the Connecticut Sun. So congrats to those 2 ladies. They will be missed, especially Helena, who was part of the team that went to the national championship game. So best of luck to them. That's what I got.
That is an impressive list. It's crazy as far as women's basketball goes. They had 7 players at the end of the season, and you had 2 that ended up as 2nd-round picks.
Yeah.
Pretty wild, because I don't think you and we just never talked about it, whether there were viable WNBA players on the roster, and to go in the 2nd round, pretty darn impressive. So congratulations to Esmery and Helena. That is fantastic. Good job, Adia. Great job developing them A players program. Can we bring that back for the?
I
Okay.
feel like that has negative connotations now. If we think of players program, we think FBI. Maybe that's just me.
We'll just move on from that. All
All
right. It
right.
is time for Buy or Sell, which is presented by our friends at iShaker. Go to iShaker.com, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C. Get $5 off. And after you purchase your iShaker, make sure to fill out the post-purchase survey, mention Wildcat Country, and Shane and I will be very, very happy
Yes, please.
with you. Okay. Number one in Buy or Sell. The transfer portal and NIL have ruined or are ruining college football. Buy or sell?
Well, I think if it was just the transfer portal window, that would be one thing. And I don't think it would be that bad. But you combine the transfer portal with the new world of NIL. They basically, the worlds collided. It's like these two storm systems colliding.
Yeah.
It's just a recipe for the chaos that we've seen, right? In the Supreme Court ruling, opened up the possibility for student athletes to make money off of their name, image, and likeness. And I'm fine with that in principle, absolutely. But as soon as that ruling came down, we knew exactly where this was headed, which is essentially allowing universities to straight up pay players under the pretense of product endorsements. I know those are part of the deal, but really it's, these collectives where we're going to give you a certain amount of money if you come play for us, which basically it's, what was once in the dark is now come to the light for a lot of programs, honestly. And of course, the highest bidders are generally going to be the programs that are already toward the top of their respective sport. I know you asked about football, but look at Alabama basketball and all the players that are transferring out of that program, despite coming off of a Final Four.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think every single student athlete decides where to play based on NIL money. I don't think that's the case. I think it's unfair to just make that assumption. And I think a lot of them, maybe even most of them, they pick a school first and foremost where they can get coached up and have the best chance to make even more money longer term playing at the professional level. At least that's the smart thing to do. And hopefully they have smart people in their ear telling them that. But in cases like that, the one I just mentioned for Alabama basketball, which is not Alabama football, you just have to believe the prospect of playing in an NIL richer program is what's the driving force there. And I think that's unfortunate and something that goes completely against what I think is the spirit of that Supreme Court ruling. Now, I'm glad college athletes can make money now. But the inevitable structure of the NIL system combined with the Wild West nature of the transfer portal has definitely led to a ton of chaos, and maybe even more so at college football than anywhere else.
All right. I'm just going to sum up what you just said in a couple words. Yes, I am buying that the transfer portal and NIL are ruining college football. Listen, I'm still going to watch. You're still going to watch. I'm still going to go to the games. You'll go to the games that you can. We all still love the sport. But it's not, and I know a lot of pundits have said this for a while now. This is not college football from when we were younger. This is not 25 years ago. This is not 30 years ago. It is unrecognizable. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I think back to, and I'll go with me here.
Okay.
Ohio State, Michigan 2006 was the most anticipated regular season sporting event that I have ever witnessed. And, two undefeated teams, biggest rivalry in the sport, 1-2 going into it. Bo Schembechler, legendary coach of Michigan, dies the week of. And it ended up being an epic game. Ohio State went to the championship game, had the Heisman Trophy winner, and got smoked by Urban Meyer in Florida, and we all know the rest of the story. With that said, you will never see in college football a regular season game that means anywhere close to what that game did again. And that, to me, is a shame. And part of that was back in the day, you saw that players would stick around. You got to see the players 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Now, you almost, Shane, have to start rooting for, you need to make sure to root for the team on the front of your jersey and not the player's name on the back. And I think that would be my one piece of advice to everyone out there when you get upset is who's transferring, who's not. You root for the you root for the Arizona Wildcats. You don't necessarily root for an individual player. And that is why I would never recommend personally buying a jersey of a collegiate athlete.
Yeah. I will say that one thing I feel like has not changed is that there are still some student athletes who come to play mainly for the university and some who come to play mainly for the coaching staff. Obviously, it's always a combination of both. But there are some who are going to be loyal to the university, whether they fell in love with the culture there, or they start a romantic relationship there and they want to stay, whatever the reason is, and others who are just going to follow their coaches. And I like a guy like Jonah Coleman, who I know is very, very close to Scotty Graham. I'm glad that he was able to follow him to Washington. As much as we're going to miss him, I understand that. That was what it was about for him. But there's always been that divide, and I think that's even clearer now. And that's why I think it's so impressive to see so many Arizona football players stick with the program after Jedd Fischl left. And the last thing I'll say is I feel like conference realignment has probably done more, or will ultimately do more, to damage the sport of college football specifically than anything else, because
Yeah.
those natural rivalries, I mean, some are going to be preserved, some aren't. And the geography is kind of out the window, and with the realignment that's really football based, you're dragging every other sport with it, which is just ridiculous. I think in the long run, that's going to do more damage to the college football brand than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Shane. I didn't include that in there, but you're right. Realignment is partially what's ruining college football. I mean, the fact that Cal and Stanford are in the ACC makes zero sense
Ridiculous.
whatsoever. When West Virginia went to the Big 12, okay, fine. I guess it somewhat made sense. Now you can't justify it. I mean, it is, the Big 10 and Pac-10 or Pac-12 used to play in the Rose Bowl, and it was an annual tradition. You'd see Michigan, USC, or Ohio State and Washington. I'm just throwing out, schools, and now they're all in the same conference. And it's going to be cool. The regular season games will be fun, but it's just weird, and I don't like it, and it's disappointing. Once again, I'm still going to go to the games, and we're still going to watch, and we're still going to talk about it on the show. But between NIL, the transfer portal, and conference realignment, the sport is not better today than it was 20 years ago, in my opinion.
Agreed 100%. And the fact that Arizona has conference football games this season against teams from Florida and West Virginia, that's all you need to know about what crazy world we're living in right now. I mean, I'm glad that Arizona's in the conference. It looks like they could win and be competitive in right away, maybe even more so than the Pac-12. But I am sad that we don't have that West Coast conference anymore. Pacific Rocky Mountain Conference. It really is a shame it's still kind of surreal to realize that there's never going to be another Pac-12 basketball game, never going to be another Pac-12 football game, and very soon not another Pac-12 anything. That's a shame.
Number two, Shane, you have faith in the current football coaching staff to be successful in this environment where you have to recruit your own players and other teams' players simultaneously.
Yeah, I'll buy that, because I think the fact that a guy like Damian Martinez, was a running back transfer from Oregon State, one of the best running backs in the country, arguably the top player in the transfer portal, certainly one of the best. He has Arizona on his list of visits right now. That to me is a very, very good sign, especially when you consider Arizona already has a pretty good running back room. Now, it's always difficult to tell, again, how much that truly has to do with the coaching staff, how much it has to do with NIL money being waved around. I've heard that Arizona football is actually in a pretty good position to be competitive in the portal from that perspective. Go figure. But that kind of news, regardless of where he ends up playing, is a positive sign. And it's something that I know we don't like to talk about Jedd Fischl anymore, but one thing that he said that stuck with me is that as far as recruiting, and he sort of alluded to this too, with football, unlike other sports, when someone does a verbal commitment in football, you almost have to start recruiting him more. It's like that's when it really begins, because then other schools are like, oh, what's this person, there must be something to him. Let's get on that. And so that's why verbal commitments mean nothing. But in terms of the transfer portal, the fact that they're in the mix for guys like that already is a very good sign. And I have faith in this coaching staff until they've given me a reason not to. Certainly, they don't have the NFL connections that Jedd Fischl and his staff had, but they seem to be off to a good start.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they were able to retain a lot of the players, and obviously, listen, I think Arizona will lose, based on the rumor mill right now, they're going to lose one or two or pieces on the offensive line. Bill Norton last week, Bourgeon is gone. Joe Bourgeon is gone. That's another offensive lineman. So they're going to have to try to replace some of those guys. I hope Big Jonah on the offensive line, Jonah Sevigny, is one that stays. Yeah. That I think it would be crucial for Noah and company on offense. Wendell Moe has been rumored. Is he a guy that's going to go? Washington's offering him a bag. So they were going to lose players. It hasn't been bad yet as we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. But at some point, it's not going to be good. I mean, we know what's going to happen. But who can this coach replace them with, or this coaching staff replace them with? And I think they'll do just fine.
Yeah, and one thing to consider, and I feel like we don't even talk about this enough, is just the shock of playing for a completely new staff. Like, imagine, like, if you happen to work in corporate America like I do, Imagine if your immediate supervisor and the whole management team was replaced overnight, and you had a
Yeah.
whole different group of people you had to get used to their expectations, get used to the way they do things, their demeanor, their expectations, the way they incentivize things, etc. That's what these guys have all had to do. And again, I have said this before, but I appreciate all the guys who have remained loyal to the program. But there are going to be some guys, you know, NIL or not, who are going to say, you know what, this just isn't a good fit for me. And I want to go back to the previous staff, or I want to go play somewhere else where I think I can be better coached and I'm a better fit. And that's okay. You don't want, like, losing Norton was a big deal, but
Yeah.
if he's not happy, and I don't think he's necessarily chasing a bag, maybe he is, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to just assume that. Maybe he gave it a shot and said, this just isn't for me. And that's okay. And but the good news is there's going to be players from other programs who say the same thing and then end up coming to Arizona. So hopefully that'll at least all even out in the end.
We can certainly hope. We'll find out. I mean, the next 10 days, maybe even after that, the next 2 weeks will be really, really fascinating. I think especially after the Arizona spring game on, I think it's the 28th. All right, let's talk a little basketball here. Caleb Love declared for the draft, but in his messaging, Shane, he said, I'm keeping my eligibility open. Now, I don't blame him for doing this. This is something that we talked about last week. Based on what you read between the lines, how do you feel about Caleb Love coming back? Are you buying that there's a pretty good chance, or do you feel like, all right, we just need to move on?
I'll put it this way. I will buy that he is more likely to return than Dalen Terry was. Because Dalen
Okay.
Terry, I think
Well,
what we essentially learned about Dalen Terry is that if he thought he could be a first round pick, he was going to leave. If he thought he was going to be second round, then he might stay because he could probably make as much, if not more, with NIL than being a second round pick, at least for that 1 year. And he bet on himself and he won. I mean, it paid off literally. He was almost a lottery pick, and he hasn't been a star in the NBA, but he got paid like one, and so good for him. Caleb Love is very likely not going to be a first round pick, and he might not be a pick at all. I looked at the mock drafts, and Pelle Larsson is usually a second round pick. I saw him as high as 33, which is pretty impressive.
yeah.
I just looked at a couple. I didn't see Caleb Love's name on them. So from that perspective, and you consider that Keisha Johnson allegedly had made about 400,000 NIL money last year, you got to think Caleb Love is making at least that much and will make more if he decided to come back to Arizona. It's crazy still that we're talking about this so openly now in terms of money to student athletes, but here we are. So I'm not sure how I feel about it, but especially when you consider who's left and when you consider that he's very likely not going to be a first round pick and maybe not an NBA draft pick at all, I think it's more likely that he'll return. And if I had to bet on it, I will lean toward him coming back. But I don't really have as far as reading between the lines, I don't really know. I'm just looking at the draft boards and going off of that.
Okay, fair enough. Now, since there is still some uncertainty here, do you believe that Tommy Lloyd and his staff should be recruiting other top guards just in case? And if you get an impact one that signs like a Jordan Pope from Oregon State, you say, see you, Caleb.
It's a tough spot though, right? Because is Caleb Love's return dependent on what they do in the transfer portal? I
I
mean,
think
maybe
so.
to a certain extent, maybe. But I mean, I don't know anyone who's going to take a starting spot. I don't know anyone. I don't know there's anyone who's realistically going to take minutes from him. So if I'm Tommy Lloyd, I don't want to feel like I got one arm tied behind my back here, having to wait to see what Caleb Love is going to do. I got to think that he's got to work on things behind this. I'm sure he's keeping lines of communication open with Caleb and let me know what you're doing. Here's what I'm doing. I'm sure they're talking about it. But I think I think he has to proceed as if Caleb Love's not coming back, even if he thinks he's going to.
Okay, fair enough. Your thoughts, just kind of not necessarily a buy or sell question, but Umar Balogun got paid rumored over $1 million to go to Indiana. Kylan Boswell
Yes.
to Illinois, where the rumors had kind of pointed him towards. How do you feel about that?
I just like to think that both guys wanted to go to the Big Ten and beat UCLA one more time. No, that's crazy.
Outstanding.
A guy like Balo getting $1 million.
$1 million
I mean,
bucks.
Balo's good, but I mean, again, going back to Caleb Love, if he's getting $1 million, man, that's something else. I don't like to think that he's chasing money, but you know what? Look, Balo is likely not an NBA player, and he may make if he's making $1 million, he may make more money next year than he does the rest of his career.
100%. Well,
So
He can go overseas and probably get paid, but yes.
No, he'll get paid overseas, but I just don't. I don't know if he's going to make. I mean, I honestly I don't know how much they typically get paid. I'm sure it's not anywhere in the ballpark of what NBA players get paid. So I don't necessarily blame him if that's the reasoning for it. Then so be it. I know Boswell had connections to Illinois, so I don't blame him for that either. So, and I'm sad to see him go. But we saw last year Tommy Lloyd did a great job of reloading, and he's got a great incoming freshman class. But I'm confident that he'll have a pretty good pick of top transfers as well.
Kylan, I appreciate what you did. I thought you were going to be a star this year, and you weren't. Best of luck at Illinois. Umar, congrats on getting the money bag there. You did great. We appreciate you. Best of luck. But as far as Arizona goes, last year, as we have referenced multiple times, I was panicking, Shane. What's Tommy Lloyd going to do? And I am perfectly calm right now. I believe in Tommy. Now, I don't believe in Tommy to win tournament games.
Yeah,
that's another story.
He's got to earn that. He's got to earn that belief, right?
I mean, with the teams that he has had, he's won 4 tournament games in 3 years.
Yeah,
with 2 number 1 seeds and a number 2, or a number 1 and 2 number 2s.
Yeah.
Not good. Like really, really not good.
But in terms of reloading, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah. Right. He's a great regular season coach. And Arizona's schedule, we're going to talk about it, that at some point might be more challenging than this year. They're non-conference. Just going to point that out.
Well, overall, certainly. Non-conference, maybe. But overall, when you're in the Big 12,
overall,
it's going to be,
Oh, it's a gauntlet.
Absolutely.
I mean, literally almost every
They could
week
lose a dozen games and be in top 5 in RPI or net rankings, because of their schedule. Yep.
It's going to be, it's got to be one of the hardest schedules in the country yet again, if not number 1. Crazy. All right. Wildcat Country is presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. You know that Harrah's Auction Casino is the only Valley casino with Caesars Rewards, player's card that pays for Vegas and more. In fact, the reward credits you earn with Caesars Rewards can be redeemed for hotel stays, dining, and more at 50 destinations across the country, including Las Vegas, Lake Tahoe, New Orleans, and dozens of others. Sign up, play, and earn Caesars Rewards only at Harrah's Auction Casino. 1 card, 50 destinations to enjoy your perks. Coming up next, it's our friend Barrett Baker here in Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here, and I'm at the Ice Shaker Warehouse, the proud sponsor of the Wildcat Country podcast, and I got something new and exciting to show you. We're talking about the 4D printed University of Arizona shaker bottles with the Legacy Championships on it. Check it out now at iceshaker.com.
All right, Shane, it's now football season, I guess, something like that, which means it's time for our guy, one of our favorite guests on the program, Barrett Baker from the Tucson Fire Department. No, I'm not going to try to get your very high title, but you are a hero. So that's all. You're a hero and an excellent football analyst and a former special teams captain at the U of A. So, Barrett, welcome back to the show. It's been a while, so glad to have you back. First of all, what do you notice about the energy around Brent Brennan and his coaching staff in having attended practice thus far this spring? Are you excited by it? Are they more excited than before? Less? Like, what's your vibe on it?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me back on as always, and it's always a great time to talk about Arizona football. So I think that any time that you get a new coaching staff in place, there's that transition, and you have to be real with it, because you've got guys that are 3 and 4 years into a program, and that's a certain culture that they have known. And now you have somebody that comes in and tries to instill not necessarily better or worse, but different. And Coach Brennan was very, very upfront about the fact that he believes in personal relationships. And, he's coming into a situation that's very, very unlike anything we've ever seen in football, with the transfer portal being what it is. So, he is really having to work at a insane pace to implement a system with new coaching staffs and relationships with 100 kids on the team. All the while there's this terrible threat, hovering over everybody, that those players could leave at a moment's notice. So I think that they've done a great job. I think some of the coaches that, Coach Shakina, again, nationally recognized, just an infectious personality, the top coach out there in the country when it comes to defensive backs, and he's leading the defense. Coach Baber's coming back and the familiarity with Arizona football there. But I think, just some of the other coaches that he's brought in, Coach Oglesby, man, that guy, he's got that thing that people gravitate towards when it comes to the offensive linemen. They love, again, that common theme of relationships. And when you're an 18 and a 19 or 20 or 21-year-old boy that is turning into a man, that coach is kind of your father. And that's what Coach Tomey was so good about. But I think that we've hit it out of the park in that vein, that these kids now have coaches that really can lead them through that time in their life, both on the field and off the field.
And that's something I alluded to during our first segment, Barrett, is that, I compared it to like at my job. If we had a completely different management team overnight, I mean, obviously that's going to be a shock to your system. And then, and to your point, it's not so much, a lot of times it's more than just like having like bosses. It's like almost like having family for some of these guys. With that said, you have, you knew there are going to be some guys who are going to transfer out, and we've seen a couple already. I'm sure there'll be more. Obviously losing Bill Norton, it hurts, but I guess my opinion is, for the guys who wanted to give it a shot and then ultimately said, you know what, this just isn't for me, I would rather they move on and find something that's a better fit for them. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. There's 14 roster spots that are open right now. So I mean, we're going to be having some transactions, and we'll benefit from that in the same vein that oftentimes, those hurt, like you said, with Bill Norton and a few of those other players. But what we've known throughout our lives in the way of college football, it is a chapter that has closed. And it's so difficult to come to that understanding and acceptance of it, but it's different. And it doesn't matter about loyalty from the fan base. And we think, man, they're part of Arizona football, and there still will be players like that. But I don't know how to understate this or overstate this, but if someone came up to 97% of the population and they said, here's $200,000, and I'm just using that as a figure, so I can't say that it's accurate, but be that as it may, if they gave a lump sum of money and said, come here and this is yours, how many people could turn that down? Because that's real. And when you're working towards getting a college education and a degree, and the first real job that you get pays you $60,000, and then you learn about taxes and everything else, and you're taking home and you have $40,000, it's not hard to follow the money. And, shame on the NCAA for not having a better plan in place when it comes to this. But we're going to benefit from some players and we're going to lose some players. And I think that while it's difficult, that is just what you have to do, is accept it. And I think the coaching staff is fully aware of the fact that the better you establish those relationships and make the kids feel like they're part of something, that maybe you don't have it so transactional, but it's just a reality, and it's going to be really challenging moving forward. And, having a favorite players per se. I mean, Coach Chiquina, he's talked about those, Traden and Gunner and Dalton, and you feel like there's a real bond there. And yet, who knows, right? In 3 weeks from now, if someone says, here's $800,000, and again, these numbers are exaggerated, but it puts the kids in a really, really difficult position.
Well, and they're not exaggerated on the basketball side, because pretty much what you just described happened with Umar Balogun at Arizona. Talking about, when Tim and Tommy Lloyd talking about how close they are, and then he got paid to go somewhere else. So, Barrett, put yourself in Coach Brendan's shoes. You got some roster spots to fill. In a perfect world, what positions are you targeting in the transfer portal?
You can never have enough guys to get to the quarterback. So, when you can move a quarterback off their spot or make them throw in 3 seconds rather than 5 seconds, that's a difference maker in football. So I think you have to get some guys on the edges. We've got Trey Smith from San Jose State, and I think, learning a new system, that's going to take a little time to acclimate. And frankly, it's the Pac-12 or formerly the Pac-12, but the Big 12 now. And he came from the Mountain West, so there's a little bit of a jump in competition there. Dominic Lolesio, a young kid, and so we've got to find Sterling Lane, again, young kid, unproven. We've got to find some guys that can get to the quarterback, and the problem with that is that everybody in the world is looking for those guys, so that comes at a premium. I think when you look at the linebacker position, Manu is established; he's a difference maker. And then who else do you have there? So you've got Kamu, and Tay Brown that really have gotten the majority of the reps in the spring. And so I think Coach Gonzalez obviously sees the same potential that our linebackers coach Nansen saw last year in those guys. And then, Justin Flo is what he is at this point. And I'm not talking down about him, but you had Dan Lanning, you had Johnny Nansen, and now you have Coach Gonzalez, and that's your third coach. And it's time. You either do or you don't. And if you don't, then he is what he is, which is a situational player. So we'll find out more about him, I think, as things continue. But that linebacker position, you need to find somebody there. And then obviously with Takario, I think that he's happy. Well, let's hope that he is at one of the cornerback positions because he's obviously very proven. And the other one, I go back to, again, when you've got Chris McAllister on one corner, well, who's the other one? Kelvin Hunter. And before that, it was Kelly Malvo. And when you got a lockdown corner, then that other cornerback's going to get picked on a lot. So when you have Takario at one side, whoever the other cornerback is, whether it's G7 or Conley, they're going to be baptized by fire here pretty quickly. So another cornerback. And then on the offensive side, I feel pretty good about things, but I think we found out a few years ago, running back, it's a physical position and you get banged up. So we need another running back. The quarterback position, comfortable there. Wide receivers, we just need some. Where's that next level behind the depth or behind the starters, and who's going to emerge there? And I think that we've got a couple of kids that have really shown themselves during the spring that they can catch the ball and they can run some routes. So I feel good about that. I'm just going down the roster. I love the tight end position. I think that Roberto Miranda is going to be a huge surprise to people. He's well respected by his teammates. He's an off-season captain. He's got a great physique. He's got soft hands. He runs good routes. Burnett, he looks the part, and he's got all the potential in the world. And it's a matter of staying healthy and realizing that. And then with Thomas and Powell, two guys behind them, that is a stacked position. So I feel good about that. And then we lost Borjan in the portal, but it's another position again. Polito needs to stay healthy, and that's hard. I mean, I feel like he's been banged up a little bit with ankles and knees and this and that, but I think the O-line, as long as we can stay intact and that we don't lose anybody to the portal, then I think that's a real strong position.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where the problem is I think that Arizona is going to be hit harder on the offensive line just based on the rumors. Now, if Big Jonah stays, obviously that'd be a big thing. But all right, obviously that's key. So Barrett, before we know who's transferring out, just based on what we know as of now, what is it, April 17th at 7:00 nearly, where are your expectations for 2024 compared to where they were directly after the Alamo Bowl?
Yeah. It's a tough one because I think that the pieces are in place. I really believe that because we lost Bill Norton, but we've got Darton coming in from Syracuse. You got Chuba that's come in on the D-line. I mean, where did we lose spots, and then who's filling in those spots? And it's allow me to say this. In 1998, we had obviously the best team we've ever had record-wise, 12-1, but so many folks were like, man, next year we're going to be just as good. And I've pointed this out before, but those losses were not filled with equal players, either from a leadership standpoint or a performance standpoint. So, you don't replace a Chris McAllister, and you don't really replace a Kelvin Ifon when it came to what he did in the locker room. So I think that's what you have to see with this team is that we've lost pieces to it. Now we have a lot of pieces that are still intact and that you expect them to produce. But what is the impact of losing Jordan Morgan? What is the impact of losing Martell Irby? What is the impact of losing some of the transfers that we won't talk about because they're not part of the program anymore? But you have to look at that and who's stepping into those roles. I do think that we have a good a leadership team in place internally. Obviously, with Noah, he's got that it factor. But I think after 3 games, I think we're going to know, and that's kind of a cop out. But just that chemistry, and I think Coach Brent Brennan has something about him that people gravitate towards. but I've not seen him yell, right? I've not seen him show the other side, which is also necessary. And, what is the team? Do they have that ability to flip the switch, even though everyone's happy and everyone's trying to establish relationships? Are they angry at the same time? And I think that that's where it's important that Coach Aquina is there, because I don't think that he will let them lose that edge. But I think that's what I'm interested to see is, do they have the edge? And I don't know what word, Coach Richrod had hard edge, and everyone comes up with certain things that they're coming up with. But I believe I saw an interview the other day with Coach Carter, the running backs coach, and he was talking about 100%, 100%. It was 100, 100. It was 100%, 100% of the time. And I think that that's what it takes. And as long as the players buy into that and they're on board with that, we've still got a really good team waiting there to show everybody what they've got.
I mean, that's a great way to sum it up. Keep your expectations in check. And that's kind of how I feel right now as well, that, I don't want to say they're going to make the Big 12 championship game, but I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to entertain us, and they're going to win more than they lose. That's where I'm at right now, and we'll figure that out closer to. All right. How do you feel about Jedd Fischl? Honestly.
I think when he left, I don't like the way he left, and we talked about that before. I just think that it's really disappointing knowing what he had here and where we were going to go, with the new conference and all the pieces that he had in place. I really do struggle with the fact of, that's what the decision that you made, but go build it there, and go build it there with your own players. And so when you hear the rumors of guys coming back, and the quote unquote tampering, and there's no way that we would ever be able to prove things of that nature, but sever ties and move on. And I think when you hear the rumors of him continuing to come back, or this coach continues to try to recruit our players, it makes it turn into a little bit more of a negative relationship at that point. I appreciate what he did for the program for the 3 years that he was here, and I don't wish him harm. But once you left here, then move on and put it in the rearview mirror, and don't keep coming back and trying to pluck. So I think when I hear that and I see that, it's more of an irritant at that point.
I will say that the further we get away from that whole thing, the more I do appreciate what Jedd did here, because he did leave your Barrett, left Brent Brennan with a very in a very good spot. Let me ask
Absolutely.
let me ask you about Noah Fifita, because as good as he was last season, and we've had him on the show a couple times before he even played a snap at Arizona, and he was just a great dude. I can't get this thought of the back of my mind that he's benefited from this human cheat code known as Tetterow and McMillan. And that maybe he's on, the top 5 quarterback list, top 50 player list for a lot of different guys. In your opinion, is he really that good, and can he get even better this season?
I do believe it, because, and I don't know how to describe who those quarterbacks are, but you could go back to probably his Pop Warner days, and that people would have realized that kid's got something different. And so I think when he came in during the Stanford game, it didn't take very long to see okay, if we stuck with Delora, we don't win that game, and who knows how the rest of the season unfolds. And I think that there's really one play against USC where he threw the interception, and it had a pretty big impact on the momentum of the game. But what else did he do that was a negative? And so, Coach Babers, I think, understands what he is. I think that he has been very transparent about what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are, and putting him in position to, again, utilize the tight end. We had Tanner McLaughlin last year, and I think that we've got some serviceable players there. Michael Wiley was a great outlet as a receiver and a blocker. So, I mean, we need to put the supporting cast around him for sure. But I don't see why he's not going to continue to play at that level. And I think it's interesting because, I read the paper every day, and I see the practice reports, or I go out there. Sometimes it says, Fifita intercepted by blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what? Intercepted? That means it was a bad pass. But I mean, there's just so much that goes on behind the scenes. But man, when those lights are on, and for that 60 minutes that he's playing out there, he's a different quarterback. And so I'm excited to see him continue to grow, because I think quarterback is a position that if you're all in on it and you understand defenses and tendencies and where the holes are, and I mean, if you can listen to Tom Brady, understand that so much is done before the snap. Before you hike the ball, are you in the right play? Are you understanding where you're going to go with the ball? And then lastly is executing it. And he has shown that he can do all of those things.
Yeah. And he's been a loyal guy as well, and definitely a leader on this team. And he was a 4-star recruit out of high school for a reason, and could have been even higher than that if he was a little bit taller, is the way I look at it. So,
to your point, I think, when you go out to practice, and I've always said this, that there is something about a Division I quarterback that, and I can't explain it, but Keith Smith would hurt my hands if I tried to warm up with him. And it doesn't mean that they throw a 95-mile-an-hour rocket every single time, but they know how to throw a ball. And it's fun to see that. And when you go out and watch Arizona practice, even last year, the kid can throw the ball. And, it doesn't matter what his stature is. His arm is just a live arm, and he'll always have that. So if you can give him the ability to call the right play and give him reads, that's the easy part, is, the delivering the ball at the very end.
All right, last question for you, Barrett. I know that we had a former Wildcat football player and a former Wildcat Country guest, Kola Anlin, joined the Tucson Fire Department a while ago. I think it's been a couple of years now. How's he doing?
I think, Kola is just a great young man, and again, family, moving from Las Vegas to Tucson. There's a lot of changes there, and with the fire department, you work 24-hour shifts, and so there's a lot to take on there, but he is navigating it. He's doing well. He's working on the east side, and he's just a joy, to talk to. He's got an optimistic outlook in life, and a beautiful little girl, and he's just he's a good man. I say kid, but he's a good young man that makes Tucson better. So I would put him in the success category, and it's been fun to watch it.
I can't follow up with anything after that. That was a heck of a closing response. Congrats, Kola, who we had him on the show once, and he was awesome, and really glad it's working out in the Tucson Fire Department. Barrett, great to catch up with you as always. Great analysis. I mean, you hit every position on the roster except for kicker and punter. But I guess we'll see. Punter, they need to do something there. We like Tyler Loop as a kicker, but please go find a punter, Brent Brennan. Great to catch up with you, and we'll talk to you hopefully before August.
Bear down, fellas. We'll have a good spring and enjoy the summer, and we'll see you in the fall.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Always good to talk to our buddy Barrett. We need to have him on more often before football season starts in August, or camp starts, but just great getting his perspective as per usual. All right, Shane, we also have another sponsor, Autograph, where you can find, it's kind of like a compilation of Arizona feeds all in one. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, you can, including Wildcat Country. Autograph was founded by Tom Brady, the idea being to reward college sports fans just for being fans. Download the Autograph app, subscribe to the Arizona channel using referral code Wildcat Country, all one word, all lowercase, Wildcat Country. And you're going to find pretty much all the Arizona-related media content you already consume all in one place, including our podcast, which is, of course, the crown jewel. And for every story you read, every podcast episode you download, you'll accrue points that you can use to buy some cool stuff. So definitely check us out on Autograph, subscribe to the Arizona channel, and you'll help us out a lot. And we think you're really going to like the app and get all of your Arizona Wildcats news, including Eric and I, all in one spot.
How about that? All right. Now, last week, I got to give myself credit. I predicted a sweep with the baseball team over Louisiana Tech, and we got lucky, but I was correct. And I predicted 2 out of 3. You and I both did, of Arizona over Oregon in softball, and they got it done. So in baseball, heading into the week, Arizona was 21st. In softball, they were 22nd. So both seemingly right now, Shane, are in a good spot to make their postseason tournaments. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, certainly. And starting with baseball, the latest Baseball America projection, and they do weekly projections of Baseball America, has Arizona as the number 2 seed in the 4-team regional that would send them to Chapel Hill in a region hosted by the number 7 overall seed North Carolina. It can get confusing if you don't follow it. I'm sure most people who are listening or watching do, but it's only the top 16 teams overall are seeded, and then in each region, each team is essentially ranked 1, 2, 3, 4. Arizona.
How they should do it. It's how they should do it for college basketball, but that's another story.
Yeah, well, so that's how it is. But if you consider that just in the last 3 weeks, Arizona has gone in Baseball America's projections from outside the field to one of the last 4 teams in, to firmly in, and now up to the number 2 team in what would be their 4-team pod. That's a heck of an accomplishment. Yeah. And I'd say the baseball and softball teams are in similar spots in terms of, if they really finish strong, the baseball team keeps it rolling, the softball team finishes strong, they actually have a chance to host a regional. As of now, I think they're both on the outside looking in. But if you're ranked, you think they're not too far out. And both teams are going to have chances for more big wins, especially the softball team. So they got to keep it rolling. Arizona, the baseball team hosts Washington State this weekend. Washington State is not a good team. Arizona's RPI is 30. Washington State's is 174. So Arizona really needs to at least take the series to keep that momentum going. They still have 18 games left in their regular season schedule, and that ends with a 3-game home set against Oregon State, which is one of the best teams in the country. So they got a lot of work to do, but if their pitching keeps up as it has, they have the 9th best team ERA in all of college baseball. There's no reason the baseball team can't keep rolling. And I'll just throw in softball team. They host ASU in a 3-game set this weekend. ASU is in last place in the Pac-12, which is really the Pac-9 for softball purposes. ASU is 2-13 in conference play. So again, if Arizona is going to have any chance to host a regional, which is still in play, they've got to at least take that series against the Sun Devils. And of course, a sweep would be very, very nice. And that's what they should do.
Let us hope, Shane. Let us hope. All right. So how many are you predicting? Baseball 2 out of 3, softball 2 out of 3? Like, that's what I'm going with.
I'm going to predict a sweep for softball. And I'm going to say 2 out of 3 for baseball, just because, a lot of times you when a streak ends, you kind of come down to earth a little bit. And, and they won 4 games during that streak on walk-offs, which is great, but not really sustainable. So I think they're going to come down to earth a little bit, but certainly they should take at least 2 out of 3 from the Cougars. They should sweep them, but I will be conservative and go 2 out of 3.
All right. We will be back at some point next week. I don't know when yet, but hopefully there isn't bad news. Hopefully it's all good news. Stay tuned to the Wildcat Country Twitter feed at Cat Country AZ for thoughts from Shane, myself, and I'm sure others who are opining on whatever happens in everything U of A sports. Thanks to Barrett Baker for joining us. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.